Welcome to the Holistic Kid Show. My name is Zane.
My name's Abdullah.
And my name's Imad.
We're the Holistic Kid, here to educate and empower us kids from the inside out.
Paleo, keto, vegan, pescatarian, and the GAPS diet, and also the standard American diet. There are so many diets.
Why did eating get so complicated?
You
Seriously.
are so right. It can get so confusing. But here on the here at our own house, we keep it simple. Focus on what all these diets have in common. Lots of veggies, clean protein, and healthy fats, except for the standard American diet. That's just fast food. We don't eat grains, no dairy or sugar. We only have them for as a treat here at our house. Just simple, clean foods that'll keep our hormones or our friends in our gut happy.
But we get a lot of comments that grains are part of a healthy diet. And how are we getting our calcium if we don't drink milk? That we won't grow. That means we won't grow. So is this type of diet like the paleo diet? Is the paleo diet right for kids?
Is that a question for me now, or are you guys still doing your intro? Sorry. I'll be quiet.
So today we have an expert in the house to talk about just that. We are so incredibly honored to have with us the one and only Mr. Robb Wolf. Mr. Robb is a former research biochemist, is the 2x New York Times, Wall Street Journal best-selling author of the Paleo Solution and Wired to Eat. Dr. Robb has transformed the lives of hundreds of thousands of people around the world with his top ranking iTunes podcast, books, and seminars. We know you are incredibly busy, so we are so honored to have you on our show today.
Thank you all very, very much. It's a huge honor to be here.
It's our pleasure.
It's our pleasure.
It's our pleasure. How does a former research biochemist go from that to writing and podcasting, teaching, and creating products all around nutrition? Can you tell us your story?
Yeah, I was actually looking at medical school. I was in the beginning stages of starting medical school, and I became very, very sick. I developed a condition called ulcerative colitis, and it was so bad that they thought that I could die. I might need really significant surgery to remove part of my digestive tract, and I might need to be on immunosuppressant drugs the rest of my life. And I was really a mess. And I knew enough about medicine at that time that I knew I didn't want to go through all of that. And so I started looking around at what might be, beneficial for me. And what I discovered is that I was very reactive to gluten in particular. I have celiac disease, which is an autoimmune disease caused by gluten reactivity. And I just don't seem to do that well with a lot of carbs and a lot of grains. And so this idea of a paleo type diet got on my radar around 1998, long before any of you were even born. And it really transformed my life and saved my life. And then I had a really fortunate opportunity to go on and begin working with lots and lots of people. And I just noticed that a lot of the folks that I interacted with had similar problems that I did. They had a lot of gut issues, a lot of autoimmune issues. And what was kind of neat was that if I could convince people to just try something like a paleo type diet for 30 days, and then see how they looked, feel, and perform. And they could then assess whether or not a paleo diet was a good idea for them. So it was, if I could just convince people to try it, most of the time they found that they felt better and they looked better and their health was better. And then usually they found some sort of a good spot with maybe they weren't perfect with it, but they found a spot that worked for them.
You wrote an entire book about the paleo diet. What really is it? And a lot of people believe it's just eating lots of animal products. Is that really what it is?
Well, it in kind of scientific circles, this idea of a paleo diet is this idea of looking at the way that people lived before the time of agriculture. So most everybody in the world 12,000 years ago still lived as hunter gatherers. And although there were differences depending on where people lived, there was actually a lot of similarities. And when we look at some of the archaeological records, it looks like those our hunter gatherer forebears were quite healthy. They had really healthy teeth and they grew up tall and stuff like that. And even more recently, there are some still existing hunter gatherer groups that are really remarkably healthy. So it's using that as kind of a beginning template to inform maybe what we could eat today. And it isn't just all meat. It kind of depends from person to person. You know, some people do better with more protein. Some people do more better with more carbs or more fat. Some people do really well with fruit. Other people not so well with different types of fruit, and maybe they do better with like yams and sweet potatoes and whatnot. But it starts people off with a kind of a protein centric, like protein is kind of their home base. And then lots of veggies, fruits, vegetables, root shoots, and tubers, depending on how that individual person works best.
That is amazing.
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 So
So,
what
what is the benefit of the paleo diet?
Man, that's a really good question. Maybe we could compare and contrast that with a standard American diet. So, if we even look back 50 years ago, there was very little obesity, very little type 2 diabetes, very little of neurodegenerative diseases like Parkinson's and Alzheimer's. And as time has gone on, these things have become really, really common. And a paleo diet isn't the only way to eat that can help you avoid what they call these diseases of modernity, but it's a good way to do it. And that's for when you get old like me. I'm going to turn 50 in January, and so you start thinking about long-term health things. But even for kids, and you know, just wanting to be strong, wanting to be tall, wanting to be smart for your school, it looks like things like a paleo type diet that are built around good protein sources, clean types of carbs that keep our blood sugar on an even keel. Those things seem to be really, really good for taking kids and helping them to grow up strong and smart and healthy. So, you know, there's lots I guess the real benefit of just any type of clean eating is that we get to have the best expression of our health that we can. You know, we're born into this world, and that's kind of a miracle to start off with. And then it's great if we can do the best that we can with what we're given. And I think good nutrition really helps us to do that.
What other foods are part of the paleo diet?
Oh man, that's a great question. So, different types of meat, seafood, eggs. Some people will eat a little bit of dairy, other people don't. I do tend to eat some dairy because I do fine with it, but other people don't include dairy so much in you know, their kind of paleo type diet. Fruits, vegetables, roots and tubers like sweet potatoes, yams, yucca, and taro, and then just like any type of fruit or vegetable that you could think of. But even within that, some people do great with tomatoes and other people don't. So there's a whole thing called autoimmune paleo. And if somebody has an autoimmune disease, maybe they're a little bit more careful with certain things like tomatoes or eggplants and things like that.
so we hear a lot about how we should be eating grains. And what are your thoughts?
Man, it's a good question, and I think that this is a really individual question. I think some people do pretty well with grains. I do think that part of the problem there is that uh, we do at some point need to eat a decent amount of animal products, like either seafood or meat or eggs or something like that. And I think then if people are really doing a good job on the animal protein side, they may be able to do okay with some grains. But there's just some people don't do that well with carbohydrates. Like my youngest daughter, um, she gets on kind of a carbohydrate roller coaster. If she eats a lot of carbs, she'll get kind of squirrely and then she crashes. And when she crashes, she is cranky and irritable and, doesn't do that well. And then there are people like me that don't do well with gluten containing grains. So I think that question about whether or not folks should or shouldn't eat grains is kind of individual, but I would make the case we should start with good proteins, fruits and vegetables, and then maybe make the grains kind of a condiment instead of the the main base of the meal that we're eating most of the time.
Now, one question: paleo, keto, gaps. What's the difference, and which one should we be choosing?
Which one someone should choose, it again is kind of based on an individual situation. The GAPS diet is short for gut and psychology diet, I believe, and it has some similarities to both paleo and keto. It tends to exclude things like grains, certain types of sugars, and for people who have really complex gut issues and sometimes like neurological issues like ADHD, autism, some people have found some real benefit there. So the similar, there's probably more similar between all three of those diets. Like they tend to limit or exclude grains. They generally limit or exclude dairy. And then there's some thought around the different types of carbohydrates that people will or won't eat. But which one, people should pick is really based off of individual needs. Like not everybody does best on a very low carb diet, like a ketogenic diet. Some people do quite well, other people not as well. So that's where you have to kind of look at a little bit of the differences and then tailor them based off of individual needs.
So, what's the difference between keto and paleo?
So, in my mind, the difference between keto and paleo really talks about food quality. It's kind of what, no grains, no legumes, no dairy for the most part. There's a little wiggle room in there, but it's not that concerned about how much protein, carbs, or fat we're eating. That can be really variable. Like one person could eat a paleo diet that is very high in carbs, and another person could eat a paleo diet that's very low in carbs, but they have the same food quality considerations. A ketogenic diet tends to be very low in carbohydrate, moderate in protein, and higher in fat. And this will be variable a bit based off of the needs of the individual. A ketogenic diet was developed originally for helping to treat epilepsy in kids mainly. This was in a time before there were any type of anti-epileptic drugs, and it was noticed that when kids would fast for an extended period of time, like a day or even a bit longer, their epileptic seizures would improve during that fasting period. But clearly, we can't forego eating all the time, or we're going to die of starvation. So the nutritionists and biochemists at that time, and this was it was almost 100 years ago. It was right around 100 years ago that the ketogenic diet was developed. They figured out that if kids ate a moderate to low protein, very low carbohydrate, high fat diet, that they would produce these things called ketone bodies, which are the same items that we produce when we are fasting, and it helps to feed the brain and it provides an alternate fuel source. And so keto is a low carb, moderate protein, high fat diet, and ideally we eat good quality types of food there, but it's not as concerned about food quality. Whereas paleo, in its kind of strictest form, is concerned about food quality, but the amounts and ratios that we eat are a little bit more up to the individual.
So we live a paleo diet and we feel awesome. Do you think that the paleo diet is good for kids? I mean, you talked about how keto was made for kids, but what about
Mhm.
paleo?
Yeah, I think a paleo diet provides a lot more latitude than a ketogenic diet. It provides more fruits and vegetables, just more variety. So you tend not to get as bored, and you can kind of have a little bit more fun with it. There's dried fruit and different things like that for snacks. Both of my daughters eat more or less kind of a paleo type diet, and they're at the 99th percentile of height for their age. And so both of them do Brazilian jiu-jitsu. They both do well in school, and that's only two people. That's what we would call anecdote. Like that's not great scientific proof, but what I've noticed is well, here I'll change tack a little bit. What we're suggesting with eating a paleo diet is that we will eat more good quality animal proteins, fruits, vegetables, roots, shoots, and tubers, and less processed food, sugar, grains, those sorts of things. And that's really kind of what it boils down to. And that strikes me as a pretty healthy way to eat. And again, like my youngest daughter, she notices that she does better a little bit lower carb. She's not keto, but she eats paleo foods, but she tends to eat more protein and fat. And my older daughter is kind of like my wife. She does great on carbs, and so she eats more yams, sweet potatoes, and fruit and stuff like that, and does really well with that.
That sounds great. So, paleo diet is a diverse diet for kids and has so many options for them. So you can't get
Absolutely.
bored.
Yeah.
So, eating real food is important and not just junk food. Why is it important to eat protein and healthy fats?
Oh man, it's interesting. There are so you guys are familiar with the like vitamins and minerals, right? Like there's certain things
Yeah.
that we have to eat in order to not just be healthy, but to just survive. And interestingly, we have essential amino acids, and these are the building blocks of protein. And our body can't make those. Our body can make some amino acids, but it can't make all amino acids. So there's certain essential amino acids, and then there's certain essential fatty acids. So these are things that it's what they call non-negotiable. Like we have to eat these in the diet, or we can get sick and potentially die if we don't get enough of them. So the adequate protein and the adequate essential fats are as critical and as important as getting vitamin A and vitamin D and those sorts of things. And that's kind of one layer of the story. The other layer of the story is when we tend to eat enough protein and good quality fats, we tend not to overeat other things. And so focusing on good protein and good fats, we tend to get full, and so we would have less likelihood to overeat other things. And this is some of the problem of the modern really processed diet. You have a bag of potato chips and some ice cream and maybe like a soda, and in the moment those things taste really good, but they don't have much protein, they don't have any essential fats, and so they don't really fill us up, and so we can just keep eating and eating and eating those. So the protein and fat is important for like basic nutrition and kind of molecular health, but it's also important because it helps to fill us up and we feel satisfied and we tend not to overeat, potentially worse foods.
Are there nutrients the kids aren't getting that choose to live paleo?
That's a really good question. Most paleo foods, unless one is eating liver, doesn't have a lot of vitamin D. So that could be a problem. But where do you guys think we should get vitamin D from, or where is a place we could get vitamin D from?
I know.
Go for it.
Rocks, minerals.
No, no.
Oh.
What about the sun?
Going out in the sun, yeah, and it doesn't take much. It doesn't take much, just a little, depending on where you live. So I live in Montana, and right now, I can't make vitamin D outside. The sun is so low in the sky that it doesn't give enough light for it to make vitamin D for me. But throughout the rest of the year, I can make a lot of vitamin D, and then I can store that vitamin D in my body. And I can eat some other things like some fish and stuff like that. But vitamin D is one of the nutrients that in theory we might not get enough of on a paleo diet, but we really do. Another thing is calcium, but it's important to remember that it's not how much calcium we eat, it's how much our body uses. And if we have enough vitamin D and if we exercise and if we have enough magnesium, which we get lots and lots of magnesium on a paleo diet, then those are the factors that are really important in like growing strong bones and being as tall as we are supposed to be based on our genetics. So at a first glance, the paleo diet could look like it's a little bit deficient in both vitamin D and calcium, but when you dig into it a little bit more, people tend to get more than enough just eating whole, unprocessed foods.
If a child isn't drinking milk, where are they getting their calcium?
Kids can get calcium from nuts and seeds, from fruits and vegetables. If you do bone broth and things like that, and so you can get calcium from other sources. Most cultures have different types of bone broth type soups. Whether it's fish bones or different types of animal bones where they make soups, and you can get a significant amount of calcium from that. But most of the whole unprocessed foods have some amount of calcium. And again, the important thing isn't so much how much we get, but how much we keep and use. And so a paleo, and it's been some decent studies looking at how bone mineral density improves on a paleo diet. So, people have raised some concerns, and this is the cool thing about science. We can ask a question. We might have a question, does a paleo diet provide adequate calcium to help kids grow? And then we can go study that. And if we design the study, properly, then we can answer that question, and then we can move on more questions.
So,
What other foods are important that most parents don't think of that kids should eat?
Oh, wow. I really do think parents undervalue protein for their kids, whether it's chicken or fish or beef or, eggs. Um, when kids eat enough protein, they tend to have steady energy levels. They tend to get a lot of nutrition. They tend not to have highs and lows on their blood sugar. So I think that if parents spend a little bit of time focusing on protein, and I call it a speed bump. When you're driving and they want you to go slow in a parking lot, there are speed bumps to kind of slow you down.
Yeah.
I call protein a nutritional speed bump. Like it slows you down, and if you focus on that, everything else kind of works out. But if we don't eat enough protein, then we tend to have problems elsewhere. So I would say that if parents put more focus on good quality protein for their kids, that a lot of good stuff would happen then.
you have created a company called LMNT. We love it. My favorite flavor is mango habanero. What
Wow, nice.
what led did you use to create this company?
Oh man, that's kind of a long story, but I'll try to keep it short. But I've eaten kind of a low carb diet for 23 years, and I definitely feel very good on that. But I've always had some challenges with exercise, and I do some Brazilian jiu jitsu, and it's a very tough sport. And I met some friends who are smarter than I am in these areas, and I asked them some questions. What could I do that would make my jujitsu and my exercise work better? And they suggested that I needed more electrolytes and specifically more sodium. And so when I fixed that, it was amazing. It really helped to improve my performance, and I felt a lot better. My sleep was better. I was happier. And so this gave us the idea of starting Element. And I'm really happy to hear that you enjoy it. And I'm very impressed that you like the lemon habanero is your favorite, or the mango chili. Lemon habanero, awesome. Yeah, and it seems to help a lot of people, particularly if you live in a hot, humid environment. Then it becomes really, really helpful to get that hydration and to keep those electrolytes at a good level.
I mean, obviously it worked. What foods did you eat when you were trying to become a former? You're a former heavyweight champion for the California state, so obviously it worked.
Yeah, that was a long time ago. I was 19 years old when I became the California State powerlifting champion, and it wasn't a paleo diet, but it was a lot of protein, a lot of veggies, and a lot of rice at that point. But it was a pretty clean food for the most part.
So you and your family lives this lifestyle, and you have young kids too. How do you handle parties? And obviously Christmas is coming, so how do you handle all of these holidays?
Yeah, we are pretty lucky in that our extended family is pretty on board with what we are doing, and really the biggest thing that we pay attention to is kind of a gluten-free approach because I have celiac disease and I'm not sure if my daughters do. Both of them have a little bit of reactivity to gluten. So like if we make some cookies, we just make sure it's gluten-free cookies or something like that. And if we go to a birthday party, we will ask the parents, is it gluten free? And if it's not, then we'll just bring like a gluten free cupcake or something. We usually just bring kind of an alternative so that our girls can participate, but we help to kind of keep them closer to the way that we eat at home. But we definitely don't want to make it weird because being a kid is already kind of challenging at times, and like eating differently is can be challenging to hang out with friends and go to family and all that. But we're lucky in that most of our family eats pretty similarly to the way that we do, and they understand some of the challenges that I have with eating. And then with friends and going to birthday parties and whatnot, we usually just communicate and talk to people and explain that our kids don't really eat gluten, and can we bring some cookies? Could we bring a cupcake or something that they could have when like the presents get opened and stuff like that?
Yeah. This is what we do too. We are so thankful that our family is on board too.
That's awesome.
So remember, you can always use substitutes like almond flour and cassava flour for all of these recipes that you might or alternatives for recipes that you might make on holidays.
Absolutely. Yep.
This has been so amazing. If kids want to start one thing today to optimize their health, where should kids start?
Well, they should definitely follow you three because you have awesome information and you present it in a wonderful format. And I just can't say enough good stuff about the work that you and your family are doing. So they should definitely follow what you were doing. Beyond that, even though we talked a lot about food, I think something that both kids and parents need to pay more attention to is sleep. And if kids went to bed a little bit earlier, maybe limited device time and stuff like that, that's a huge and important piece that really gets missed these days. So even though we talked a lot about food, I think that sleep and avoiding too much device time is maybe as important as the food.
Where can people learn more about you and your work?
People can go to robbwolf.com, ROBBWOLF.com, and they can find the podcast that I do with my wife. It is not nearly as good as the podcast you guys do, but we do the best job that we can. And then I have lots of good resources for people there too.
Well, that is amazing.
Amazing.
Now let's recap Dr. Robb's key points.
Because it was so empowering. Everyone make sure to follow him on social media, and his books are a must get.
Thank you so much, Mr. Wolf.
Thank you. It's a huge honor. If you ever want me to come back, I would love to do it.
So
No.
back to recapping Dr. Wolf's key points.
Number 1, nutrients from foods determine how your brain works and your body functions. If we put junk in our bodies, it leads to a junky brain and behaviors, with most kids eating the standard American diet, which 90% of Americans, including children, have a nutrient deficiency like vitamin B, magnesium, vitamin D, selenium, vitamin K2, vitamin E, and potassium. So many minerals and vitamins that people are just missing out on. And so focus on foods with lots of nutrients, so kids' brains and bodies can work the best it can. Remember, the paleo diet is all about eating quality foods. Make sure to focus on lots of vegetables, clean proteins, and healthy fats. We love to eat the rainbow. It's fun and delicious. When you eat paleo, there is so much variety, and also when you eat paleo, you eat less junk and more real food. Make sure you eat enough protein, and we love organic pasture raised chicken.
I love wild caught salmon. My favorite way to eat it is to open a can, add olive oil and olive oil, salt, and raisins. So delicious.
New research finds that children who eat more fruit and veggies have better mental health. So get your kids to eat as many fruits and veggies as possible. We love fermented foods, so incorporate these into your daily routine to keep your gut bugs and your body healthy. We choose different types of fermented foods and love to have sauerkraut, usually for breakfast or dinner.
With the holidays coming up, make sure to find good replacements that are nutrient dense.
And make sure to sleep and limit screen time, especially before bed.
Thank you so much, Mr. Wolf.
Thank you. It's been a huge honor.
It's our pleasure.
It's our pleasure.
Our pleasure.
Our pleasure.
Thank you everyone for tuning in. Until next time, I'm Zane Ansari.
I'm Abdullah.
And I'm Imad.
Follow my family and I on social media, Holistic Mom MD, and look out for my mom's book, The Holistic RX, your guide to healing chronic inflammation and disease. And we are so excited to announce our mom's books, The Holistic RX for Kids, Parenting Healthy Brains and Bodies in a Changing World, and the amazing children's book we wrote together called Adam's Healing Adventure, The Power of Rainbow Food. So check it out on Amazon. Yay! Kids need to learn from other kids. Please download our podcast on iTunes and leave a review so other kids and families can benefit. We need to work together to create a healthier future for all of us and the planet. Join us next week for another episode of the Holistic Kids Show, where kids are empowering kids. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.